In 2024, the Louisiana Legislature updated the small succession provisions in Act 90 during the regular session. These changes took effect on August 1st, and many attorneys may not yet be aware of them. It's crucial to understand these updates because they significantly alter the requirements for when a small succession applies and what must be included in the small succession affidavit. I'll also explain how Ayla's legal document software has been redesigned to help attorneys navigate these new requirements for the small succession affidavit. Under the revised articles, a small succession affidavit can be used in 3 distinct scenarios. The first scenario is when a decedent was domiciled in Louisiana and owned property with a gross value of $125,000 or less, valued as of the date of death. The second scenario is when the decedent is domiciled outside Louisiana, and the decedent must have left property in Louisiana with a gross value of $125,000 or less, valued as of the date of death. One additional requirement for this scenario is that the succession must be an ancillary succession. The final scenario can be used regardless of where the decedent was domiciled or the value of the decedent's estate. Instead, if the decedent died more than 20 years before the execution of the small succession affidavit, the small succession applies. Note that this scenario can only be used for the small succession affidavit. Let me turn our attention to the small succession affidavit. The affidavit requirements vary depending on whether the succession is testate or intestate, the value of the decedent's estate, whether the decedent's estate contains immovable property, and whether it is an ancillary succession. Also, the affiance required can vary widely depending on whether there is a surviving spouse or if the succession is testate or intestate. It can also vary depending on whether there is one or more heirs. Unless the practitioner pays close attention, it is simple to overlook a requirement and thus generate an invalid affidavit. Ayla's legal software helps attorneys navigate the sometimes confusing requirements of the small succession affidavit. Let's take a quick look on how Ayla accomplishes this. What you're seeing is Ayla's user interface. Ayla works by asking questions to an attorney or their staff. As these questions are answered, Ayla adjusts the interview based on the circumstances. On this specific page, Ayla is helping me determine if I can generate a small succession affidavit. Let me highlight how this is accomplished. Let's start by indicating that the decedent was domiciled in Louisiana and died intestate. Bring your attention to the justification section. If I change my answer to reflect that the decedent died outside of Louisiana, notice that the justification for the small succession changed. Let's change this back. If I change the succession to testate, an additional question appears asking if the decedent had immovable property. If I confirm that there is immovable property, Ayla presents me with a message that the small succession affidavit does not apply to this circumstance. Let me again change my answer to show that the decedent died intestate. For the justification, let's specify that the decedent's property had a gross value of $125,000 or less at the time of death. As I continue the interview, Ayla will ask me about the decedent's property. Let me add one piece of immovable property. The property is classified as community property and is valued at $90,000. It is subject to the usufruct in favor of the surviving spouse. I will then copy the legal property description into the text box requesting this information. Ayla allows me to add as many pieces of immovable property as I need. If I modify the value of this piece of property above $125,000, Ayla will present me with an error message that explains that the property exceeds the threshold required for a small succession. The last step is for me to indicate who the affiance will be. Starting this process is easy since Ayla has provided me with an abbreviated explanation of who should be an affiant. In this circumstance, the decedent has a surviving spouse and 2 heirs. I will indicate that each heir is signing. Ayla will automatically add the surviving spouse as an affiant. Once the interview is complete, Ayla generates the small succession affidavit, which is downloaded to my computer. Ayla's documents were written by practicing attorneys in Louisiana. This ensures that Ayla's documents have a professional appearance and quality akin to that of a skilled Louisiana attorney. Since all of the documents that Ayla generates are in Microsoft Word format, they can easily be edited to add other customizations that an attorney desires. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our newsletter at aylalegal.com/news. We routinely send updates and practice tips for Louisiana solo and small firm practitioners.